on the macronutrient train, carbohydrates.
At some point in the future.
They
Not
only
in this
make up
scenario.
about 2% of our body composition. So that's way less than the other macronutrients. And, fascinatingly enough, there are no essential carbohydrates. So, while it's part of a healthy diet to eat some carbohydrates, and lots of foods, most foods have some carbohydrates in them, our body doesn't actually have to eat any carbohydrates. We can make, our liver can make carbohydrates from both protein and fat. And the main role, well, no, let's say this a different way. So blood sugar has to be within a certain range for us to function well and to feel good, right? And so we need to have blood sugar. We need to have sugars in our body, but our body can synthesize those. And the brain really prefers sugar as a fuel. The muscles can use either sugar or fat as a fuel. They have the ability to be energized by either one, but the brain is sugar. That's how it works. And
anthropologically, why do you think that is? Or
I'm not sure about the I don't know. I mean, I think that there's probably a chemical, biological reason for that sugar is easier to break down and turn into fuel really fast.
Right.
The heart actually prefers saturated fat as a fuel. And so that's like the slow, steady, the heart has to be like constant, you know, it needs like the slow burning, like the big logs in the fire. That's an analogy that they use at the school that I went to. And the brain needs like the flashpoint, you know, it's like doing things fast and on the fly. And so it needs a kind of molecule that can break down and turn into energy really quick. That's my unprofessional, like, that's my opinion.
But it's confusing because the brain is like all fat, right?
Right. Yeah, the brain is made of fat. Yeah, totally.
Compose it.
Yeah. But then to fuel it, yeah.
It's fun to think of them as like different organisms.
Yeah, totally. I love that.
Yeah.
The brain is
So-
like the last thing to develop, right?
Yeah. Well, in the state that it's in now, yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just wondering
Yeah.
if it hasn't developed enough to just, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a special
What's
function.
what's cool about the brain is that it like divides from your gut, right?
Yeah.
So like your gut is like literally your,
Your second
brain.
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 Yeah.
What?
And there's
That's the stuff.
Wait a
that
minute.
Well, that's-
I get.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Is this true?
No,
Yeah.
it is. It's
I don't know this.
And I forget. Okay,
They
so
say
when
your
a
gut is your
fetus
second
is
brain.
forming, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I want to talk about some other nutritional things. But when a fetus is forming, there are like some base cells that turn into all the other cells, and you kind of have this proto heart and this proto digestive system, and they sort of birth in a way. This is like a very crude way of saying it, but the different other organ systems in our body. And so that's one way in which the gut is the second brain. And another way is that we have the vagus nerve, so it's going up and down, sending signals from the gut to the brain and from the brain to the gut. And it's, I forget exactly the ratio, but it's very similar. Like signals going from the gut up and signals going from the brain down. So they're communicating as much with each other. It's not just the brain going down and telling the gut to do things. It's the gut giving information.
So
to the
good
brain.
Partnership.
Just something else for me to explore.
Yeah,
Instinct.
totally.
Okay,
It's
cool.
something to look into.
Yeah.
It's
So lots of
Yeah,
work.
it's like
Totally.
intuition.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and that's, you know, like your gut feeling
Yeah.
and like all these things in language that kind of allude to that. And then the fact that a lot of our neurotransmitters come from or are broken down in our gut, so that's another thing. It's the neurotransmitters are not made in the brain; they're made in other parts of the body. So like serotonin is actually made in the gut, things like that. Very fascinating.
Yeah.
And more research is going. I mean, this is like where we're
Cutting
at in
edge.
understanding the body is like the gut and then the microbiome are like
Yeah.
the prima donnas of human biology right now, because there's just so much there and they kind of have been overlooked. In my opinion, because of like a cultural propensity for valuing intellectual knowledge and valuing, I won't.
Wow,
That's
that's
like a
cool.
whole nother layer that is my personal opinion, but you can think as you will.
Wow.
So carbohydrates, another way to look at this role of carbohydrates in our evolution is that our body has a couple of ways to raise blood sugar if it goes dangerously low, right? We can turn fat into either fat in the diet or stored fat in our body into blood sugar to raise the blood sugar up if it's dropping too low. And we can turn protein in the diet or muscle mass into blood sugar to raise it back up if it's dropping too low. We only have one way of lowering blood sugar if it gets too high, which is insulin, basically, which is insulin is a hormone. No, insulin isn't, and it's a hormone. Yeah, it's an enzyme. Yeah, it's a hormone.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I
Hello.
need to brush up
Nurse.
on my vocabulary.
It's
Yeah.
a hormone.
It's a hormone. Okay, thank you. I'm just okay. It's late in the day.
It's been a long time since I've done all this nutrition stuff
Yeah.
too.
So insulin basically, I was talking about those cell membranes earlier. So this, you don't just eat sugar and then it goes into your cells and gives you energy. You eat sugar, it has to get broken down and digested, pass through the blood-brain barrier in the small intestine. Then it's in your blood. Then your blood sugar is up. Then it gets transported. It gets this escort of this insulin molecule, which is a hormone. And the insulin molecule is the one who knows like the special secret knock on the door of the cell membrane to open up and let in the blood sugar. So just a sugar molecule floating around in your blood doesn't go straight into your cell. It needs insulin to be the communicator to open up the cell wall and let it in. So the fact that we have several methods of raising blood sugar that's too low, but only one of lowering blood sugar that's too high, is good evidence to support the understanding that our diet was lower in sugar and carbohydrates than when we evolved. So we had more experience needing to raise our blood sugar than needing to lower it. Currently, in the modern world, the opposite is true. Most of us eat plenty of carbohydrates, and many of us need more frequently to low. Our blood sugar gets too high more often than it gets too low. And blood sugar dysregulation is a result of blood sugar that gets too high, and then the resulting spike in insulin, and then it'll drop and get too low, and it gets dysregulated, and that's where you get like really sleepy after meals, and where you get like dizzy sometimes, or where you can't sleep at night because your blood sugar is all crazy, and then you can get metabolic syndrome, prediabetes, and diabetes, which is rampant in this country. So that's just sort of like a biological evolutionary lens to look at the current diabetes epidemic through. Our bodies just didn't evolve to deal with so much sugar in the form of sugar, carbohydrates, alcohol, all those different things break down into sugar. But it's not that carbohydrates are bad, we're just out of balance with them, just like what I was saying with the omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids. So like I said, they're fuel for the brain, they're quick energy source for the muscles, they help regulate fat and protein metabolism, so we do need all three. I mean, yeah, we do need all three, most of us. They're also sources of fiber and polysaccharides. So fiber is really important food for our gut microbiome, and polysaccharides are these long chain sugars. Many of them feed the gut flora. They also can be very healing and stimulating to the immune system. So they're valuable in a lot of ways. And those are usually in the complex carbohydrates. You're not getting fiber and polysaccharides from like a soda or a piece of cake. They're in the more complex carbohydrates. So what's the difference between a complex and a simple carbohydrate? Anybody know?
Complex is probably more natural state.
Mm-hmm.
Simple has been processed somehow.
Yeah, that's generally the case. There is a spectrum even in the natural state of more complex and more simple. And so the more complex carbohydrates are just bigger molecules basically, and so they take longer to break down, and they have more different parts that our body can use, like the fiber and the polysaccharides. And simple sugars are shorter molecules, and they just become blood sugar much faster and easier, and they don't have many other things that our bodies can use, like fiber and the polysaccharides. So like potatoes, for example, are a complex carbohydrate because they're in their whole form, but they have they're not as complex and don't take as long to break down as something like broccoli is also a source of carbohydrate. Even it has much less, it has other things, but even like whole grain wheat has more complexity and more going on than a potato in the realm of the carbohydrates contained within it. So how can we grow our own carbohydrates?
Leafy greens.
Ways. Leafy greens, pretty much every vegetable. Corn, beans, Beans have a lot, even though they also have protein. Fruit.
Coconut cream pie bush.
Coconut cream pie bush. You have seeds that you want to share with us from
I'm
the
not
coconut
sharing.
cream pie bush? Can I get a cutting?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of carbs in fruit.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Fruit. All grains. Seeds. Yeah. So it's pretty easy to grow carbohydrates.
Where do nuts fall on the carb fat
Depends on the nut.
protein? Yeah.
Depends on the nut. So something like a chestnut is pretty carby and doesn't have as much protein. And then something like an acorn, I think, is kind of in the middle. Like they have some carbohydrate, but they're very high in protein and fat. And then something like
Walnut
a walnut is getting oilier, and a pine nut is pretty oily.
Almonds are usually.
Yeah.
A lot of people, like, when they do, like, Atkins and things like
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
like, it's like, nuts are, like, phase 2. Like, they're allowed, but they're just, like, not right away. Because they're
There's a bit of carb in them.
they have some,
Yeah.
but it's more so that you'd have to eat a lot of nuts to get your, like, what you would really, like,
Your
want
fat.
out of,
Yeah.
out of carbs,
Yeah.
So,
And then you
And it
gain
depends on the
all
nut.
weight
Like I
back.
said, like chestnuts are very carby, and
not that I think anybody should
there's a
do
whole
Atkins.
spectrum.
I just have a lot of patients that used to do that.
There's a seed that people eat as a nut. It's actually a seed of a euphorbiaceae that people eat in Peru called sacha inch, and it's like has almost no carbohydrates, and it's very popular in the ketogenic diet world.
Huh.
So there's a spectrum in nuts and seeds.
Can you touch a little bit on ketogenesis in the body?
I've never even heard this word before in my life.
So ketogenesis, it's something that I have a friend who's like big into it, and so I've learned most of what I've learned from her. It's not something that I've like deeply studied, but ketogenesis is basically when you switch the body over from metabolizing sugar to metabolizing fat. So like I said, our body doesn't need to have sugar, and so if we eat enough fat in our diet and give and few enough carbohydrates, then our whole metabolism will switch over to burning fat as a primary fuel source instead of carbohydrates. So it changes our whole metabolism, and people usually choose a ketogenic diet for particular health reasons. My friend discovered it because her husband had lung cancer and an inoperable tumor, and they were like,
Wow.
good luck to you. And he's still alive and doing well, and that's been their approach, is the ketogenic diet, because cancer cells only can grow on sugar. They
Oh,
need
that is
sugar.
quite interesting.
It is. Oh,
With
yeah.
epilepsy too. It's
Yeah,
been a big
epilepsy has
thing.
been a huge thing.
So sure.
And then
must be
some
in the
people
dark.
choose to do it for weight loss. I've known a lot of people
Yeah.
who've chosen the ketogenic diet for weight loss.
Yeah.
My mom's going nuts right now because
Which is, hey,
family dinner.
whatever you gotta do. I know somebody who chose to do it for weight loss, and it's changed her like mood and energy and in a positive way. So
It's not called
And it's expensive. It's an expensive.
it is expensive
way to
because
eat.
you have to be able to eat basically no carbohydrates. I mean, you can eat leafy greens and vegetables, but no starchy carbohydrates at all, and no sugar at all, and a lot of good quality fat. An interesting thing with the ketogenic diet is it's not extremely high in protein.
Right.
So it's not like the Atkins diet. It's not focusing on protein. It's really focusing on the fat.
So like olives and avocado,
Yeah.
cheese.
Yeah.
How do you spell the beginning of ghee?
Keto.
Yeah, it's just
Oh,
all
okay.
I don't
Okay, I know. Yeah, I've
Did
seen.
you have a question
good
more about
stuff.
like the biological process of ketogenesis?
I just want to, because you said that cancer cells like
Yeah.
feed on sugar, so
That's
that's
so
why their approach is
interesting.
the ketogenic diet. But like I've also met people and I've read about people that have cured cancer on like a fruitarian diet. So it's like how
Cancer is complex.
is it like is it really like the elimination of like unhealthy processed foods that is what's getting rid of cancer, and not so much like whether we're eating high fat or high natural sugars?
I think that's a question that I have too, and what I learned in supporting my friend through cancer, and now I mean, how anybody here never know anybody who's gotten cancer?
Of course not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cancer.
I had
is-
cancer at 38 years old. I mean,
Yeah.
breast cancer
Yeah.
at
So
38.
cancer is
Women shouldn't
not
have been-
one disease. It's a lot.
Breast
There's
cancer.
some things that are the same about how it proceeds, but it's many different diseases. And I think, everybody's an individual and their approach to curing it is individual.
Exactly.
And that's, when I was doing this with my friend, I was like, my role was like feeding her. And I looked into all these things too, and was like, okay, are we going to juice or are we not going to juice? Like, juice has a lot of sugar, but juice has all these enzymes and all these other things too. So that's again where we come back into like, be your own authority. And part of it is what you can actually do. And part of it is what you feel resonant with. And then part of it is understanding the biology behind it. And like, does this make sense to me, biologically speaking?
And I think you just touched it, but I think what's important is that like cancer is just like the name for like a lot of, but it really is like different diseases. Like it's not like the same thing happening, just different parts of your body. Not really. Do you know what I mean? It's just
so you could be feeding the cancer by eating the juice and the fruits and stuff, but because you're getting so many antioxidants and enzymes and phytochemicals in, and detoxifying because of that, then that's what ends up curing your particular kind of cancer.
Sure.
So
Do you
that's
mind-
like a whole complex.
Do you mind sharing just briefly what were you feeding your friend while she was going through?
What kind of cancer is it? I mean, can we just be a little?
She had a rare presentation of endometrial cancer, and I was supporting her during chemotherapy, so it was very specific.
Okay.
Does that mean uterine cancer?
Endometrium is the lining of uterus.
Uterus.
And I was feeding her a lot of things to strengthen and nourish her body, because chemotherapy basically kills all of you that can be killed without you dying, in the hopes that it kills the cancer. And so I was feeding her specific things that would help with the regeneration of white blood cells, like bone broth and mung beans, and things that were easy on her digestive system, because your digestive system's really taxed when you're going through chemo. And then the high antioxidant, high phytochemical. And some days I was feeding her whatever she would eat, because that's the reality with chemotherapy too.
Yeah, I did 6 months of chemo.
Yeah.
5 weeks of radiation.
Yeah. I'm glad you're here with us. Still.
Yeah, I'm a 20-year survivor.
Yeah.
Yay!
Awesome.
Yeah.
So let me see how much time we have. We don't have that much time. Are there aspects of nutrition that anybody was really wanting to hear something about or hear my perspective on?
What's your perspective on fasting or detoxing?
I think that is a really valuable tool, and that there are that approaching a fast by assessing the health of your organs of elimination before fasting or detoxing is really important. So when fasting, both. When we fast, our body detoxes because it has to burn up stored fat in order to survive. And when we do any other kind of intentional detox, our body's detoxing too. So it's taking waste and toxins that have been stored in our body and trying to and mobilizing them, basically. So getting them out of storage and into our blood and into circulation. And ideally, like a healthy process of detoxification will then release them from our bodies. But if our liver is super taxed, or if our digestion is out of whack and we are constipated, or we're not able to actually get those toxins that are released out of our body, then detoxing can be more harmful than beneficial. So some people will be like, whatever, on a bender, like binging, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna detox now, and they're gonna do a heavy like juice cleanse and whatever, and that can actually be, what's that?
People often do get really sick.
Yeah, people often do get really, really sick. And actually what could be a better choice health-wise would be to do like a very gentle supportive digestion and liver, like take bitters before every meal and eat a lot of fiber and drink tons of water, and not do this heavy intense detox, but just really get your organs of elimination going and toned, and then maybe step into a heavier detox.
So do you do it?
I do periodically. I haven't in a while because I've been pregnant and nursing. And so when you're pregnant or nursing, if you mobilize toxins in your body, they go straight into your baby.
Wow.
And so I don't want to do that. But I'm looking forward to it when I wean my baby, doing some sort of cleanse.
Ask what's your detox of choice?
I think just intermittent fasting is a really easy, nice way to do it. So choosing a couple days a week where you don't eat and after like 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and then you don't eat again till breakfast, is a really nice way to give your body a break of over 12 hours of not eating. Obviously, if you're like, you know, for me it's tricky because I work really physically, and so I don't do that when I'm like out in the field working until like 8 or 9 at night, because then I get really dizzy and woozy, and I feel like, taking the time to not only not eat but not stimulate yourself with other things is really important too. You know, just not eating and going to work and doing all your things is like giving yourself the space to detox energetically too, I think is really helpful. And then I've done a couple of khichdi cleanses in the winter, because the winter tends to be the time when I can slow down, and so just eating really simple Ayurvedic khichdi, which is like mung beans and soaked brown rice and lots of really warming spices, and just eating that for like a few days at a time. Juicing is great. I've never done a juice fast just because I haven't been in a place where I've had access to that much fruits and vegetables, and I haven't been farming. And doing a juice fast when I'm like heavy working my body just hasn't felt like a good choice for me personally. There's lots of different kinds of ways to detox. So it's not an area of expertise for me, but I think it's a really awesome thing to do.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other overarching? Yeah, did you have a question?
If I could just touch
I-
base
yeah,
on the
yeah, sure.
detoxing, because I've been detoxing and learning more about detoxing and cleansing for about 7 years now, and I've done juice cleanses and all kinds of different cleanses and detox. And I think one of the most beneficial, if you're interested, you might want to research Dr. Schultz. He's a herbalist out in California. He is like on a pedestal in California. Everybody just adores this man. He has the highest quality herbs. But one of the things that I really like, in fact, I don't even do any of those other cleanses that I've done in the past. I stick strictly to his, because you're not only taking the herbal tinctures, and you're basically eating all organic greens while you're detoxing and drinking, lots of liquid. But he has an incredible protocol, and he swears that you really need to, before you start any cleanse, you need to detox the bowels for like at least 3 to 5 days, and then you detox the liver, and then you detox the kidneys. And there's a reason that for that regime, but he has everything on his website. And I usually do his detox once every quarter, or at least twice a year, maybe spring and summer, and then fall and winter.
So that's great to share one that's worked for you, and there are lots of detox like protocols and products that you can buy, and I think there's lots of ways that you can detox and cleanse without buying any extra things too.
I do
It's just helpful.
intermittent fasting almost every day, just because that's just the way my body works.
Yeah.
But I've just never really done one that made me feel good that was more than that, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like like a 3-day,
Yeah.
like I start
Yeah,
feeling
yeah.
like lightheaded and not good. But I often don't eat until like noon, 2 o'clock.
But
just
that's norm,
Yeah.
like on your any detox that you do, day 2 and day 3, that's when you kind of crash. You feel very sluggish, and you're not supposed to do anything,
Right.
any physical, activity.
Maybe I just have never had a life
And
where
it's
I
just
feel
that
like
day
doing it.
2.
That's another thing.
Yeah, I mean, just
So
kind of.
I'm kind of wanting to, since we are sort of running out of time, if you guys want to talk about detoxing
Sure.
afterwards, I just want to give space if there are any other overall nutrition questions. Yeah.
So we talked about bio-individuals and how what our ancestors ate in their, biological region affects what we need to eat.
Mm-hmm.
But what are your thoughts on like bioregional nutrition from like where you're living now, and like why and how would eating stuff from where you're currently living possibly give you a leg up on, surviving in that specific environment?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the main things would be accessing fresh food and high quality food. Because, like I said, a lot of nutrients, especially in plants, start to degrade the minute that a plant is harvested, and especially fresh fruits and vegetables. And so, if you're eating bioregionally, then chances are it's easier to eat things that are more fresh. You know, if you're eating from your own garden, then you can go out and, you know, Felix, my little boy, you know, he likes to go up and just eat tomatoes. Like, he just goes down like, oh, like, yeah, like very alive. He was trying to eat an unripe raspberry like that and like pulling on it. So that's one advantage. Another advantage is that when you're eating bioregionally, the chance is much greater that you can go and visit the producer of your food, and so you can really ascertain the quality of your food, not based on some sort of certification or seal or bureaucratic government. Yeah, which, I mean, it has a place. I'm not going to say that it's bullshit, but it's not as good as going and visiting the farm where your food is produced and seeing with your own eyes and talking with the farmer and having the relationship. And on another level, that level of like nutrition is beyond just the food that you put in your body. Then you're nourished by those relationships as well. When you sit down and eat, you know, the carrot, you remember, when you sit down and eat the tomato from my farm, you think about little Felix eating the tomato, and it's like, oh, that's nice. That's a nice thought. You know, I'm eating the tomato like the little baby who eats it right off the vine, and it puts you in a relaxed space, and it puts you in that parasympathetic nervous system. So there's that element of it. And then, let me think. And then there is the reality of our biological individuality. So I have a friend who lives here who's from Alaska and has part of her ancestry is like native Alaskan. And it can be kind of tricky eating here. Like, she needs to eat a lot of fats and a lot of meats. And so they raise animals, which helps. But, you know, it's the kind of environment that her ancestors evolved in was very different than this one. And so she struggles in the summer, you know, just not feeling comfortable and, you know, finding the right foods for herself. So that's something to consider too. And then the thing that I shared, the example of the ability to utilize the different forms of omega-3 fatty acids. If your ancestry and your organism evolved really needing the deep ocean water oily fish, and you live in the Midwest, you can buy those things and they'll come from a long way away, and maybe it's worth it. You know, that's a personal choice that you can make. Or maybe you get fish oil supplements, or you buy cans of sardines, or whatever it is. But it may be that, you know, even though where you live there's like this highest quality local fresh food that you can have a real connection with, you may need to supplement some other things just in order to give your body the nutrition that it has evolved to most optimally need.
Wow.
Did that answer your
Great
question?
Yeah.
Cool. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I would just like to know any kind of plugs that you have, whether it be for what was the place?
Appearon. It's in Asheville next to High Five Coffee on Broadway.
Appearon.
They do.
Does it
it's
cost
like
a lot of money?
It's like a yes. It's like a high end
David
kind
Krantz.
of like place. But some of the stuff they're developing there, you know, will eventually be really affordable to everyone. They're doing a lot of stuff with biofeedback, and they're doing a lot of stuff looking at genetic SNPs to tell you exactly what your ancestors ate. So you know what you should eat.
What's the
I haven't
cost?
done it yet.
Wait a minute, you said expensive, so what's that
So a
mean?
23andMe test
Is
like
$100.
is a couple $100. I think they charge like $1,000.
Wow.
$1,000?
Yeah, but I mean, how valuable is the knowledge of exactly what you're supposed to eat throughout your life to you?
Yeah.
Correct.
And it'll also
yeah,
tell you, like you were talking
is it
about
real?
how, you know, our whole concept of vitamins, you were saying, is kind of like made up. Like, and how all these nutrients are really complex. They can also tell you, like, you're supposed to eat this, you can get your omegas from fishes, or you
That
need
sounds
this
really
kind of
like an interesting
vitamin
resource.
B. Yeah.
So you're wanting other
I was-
resources?
Yeah,
like,
other plugs, like whether it be more intellectual, like the nutritional, the Nutritional Therapy Association, or like specific, just like relating it to permaculture, and I'm thinking of like food guilds in terms of like rice and beans, like those are like working together, the apricots and nuts or whatever.
Totally. Yeah.
So just any other plugs for recipes or processes, or like your favorite cookbook, or anything like that.
I'm going to email you guys this handout, which has a whole nother section. I actually originally developed this for a class that I taught at the Organic Grower School that was looking at nutrition and cooking. and which I think is like a key part of the puzzle, because even if you buy a bunch of really nutritious food, you have to prepare it in a way that's like tasty and that works in your lifestyle. Like taking the time to prepare food can be an issue for a lot of us because we're busy and all of those things. So there's a lot of other stuff in here about that. But there are a lot of resources in here, including a book that I really like called Fortify Your Life by Tironi Lodog, who's an MD and an herbalist and a midwife and just an amazing woman. She's kind of like Aviva Romm's homie. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's also all those things, and just like kind of a translator between natural medicine and allopathic medicine. Just they write amazing books. But yeah, her book, called Fortify Your Life, breaks down all of the known vitamins and minerals and tells you kind of a little bit about their history, how they're most bioavailable, the kinds of foods that you can really get them from, what's the real necessary amount, which is not what the government tells you, and then if you're going to supplement, the best forms to supplement with. So it's a reference that I use all the time. It's a really amazing book. There's some other great books in here.
But it's on the sheet that you're...
Yeah, it's on the sheet. I think everything that you're wanting is probably on here, and I'll share. But in terms of traditional foods diets, it's and like paleo diet. Paleo diet can be really fatty and weird, FAD, like it's kind of fat and this whole thing. But I think fundamentally, it's like I personally connect with it as a philosophy the most. And when somebody explained it to me this way, it helped me understand. It's not about becoming like a caveman and eating like a caveman, which obviously none of us are going to do. It's about looking at biologically how our bodies evolved to eat and creating a balance that's similar to that. So a balance of macro and micronutrients that are what our bodies evolved to be fueled by. So not like, obviously we're not going to eat like this, just ridiculous. I mean, the paleo bars that are like coconut.
That's
and like,
gross.
Yeah, I think it's just ridiculous. But this idea of looking at, for the 99% of our evolution, the kind of balance that our body evolved to use, and coming back into that. So there's some good resources in the like paleo world. Some of them are just ridiculous. I would say in terms of cookbooks, Deborah Madison has several cookbooks. One of them is called Vegetarian Cooking for Everyone, and like I said, I'm not a vegetarian, but learning how to cook with vegetables and making vegetables your primary, and then having your animal products as like, an addition to that is a really good foundation for good health. And many of us didn't grow up like that. It was like the vegetable was the side dish, and the meat and the starch was the main thing. And so switching and just learning how to work with vegetables as you get them from the farmer's market or grow them. And she has a book called Vegetable Literacy that's really awesome, and she loves vegetables, and she has wonderful recipes and like how to cut them in different ways and different ways to cook them and different sauces, and it just really walks you through a lot of
Is that on your
Is that on
hand?
the list?
yeah, it's on here.
Okay.
And then Alice Waters, of course, is awesome. And America's Test Kitchen and Cooks Illustrated both have lots of free videos online, and like how to prepare a blah blah blah. They'll like walk you through it, especially Cooks Illustrated. They'll walk you through like how to do these basic cooking things that once you master them, then you can prepare all kinds of different things. And then there's one more that I would speak to, and it's on here too. And it's this funny project of these two like housewives, and I say that term with I consider myself a housewife in many ways. It's called foodwifery.com, and it's like a subscription service, but you can try it for a month for free, I think. And they walk you through with videos how to prepare all these different traditional foods. So working with like making bone broths and different